This method works very well as an introductory method to push-ups. For people who haven't done a ton of push-ups in their life, this is probably the most solid plan that we have. The goal is to not train so hard that you don't want to train anymore, because that's what happens when you take people and you ask them to do max push-ups all the time. Members of the military have to do push-ups for their readiness tests, part of their physical requirements that they have to do every so often, depending on which branch you're in and what country you're in. But for the most part, push-ups or press-ups, if you're from over the pond, are part of those tests. Simplest method to do is a volume cycle. Most people are not super great at push-ups because for the most part, push-ups aren't something that's actually used all that much. Like if you go to judo class, you don't fall on the ground and do a push-up to get up. You do some other type of get up. A push-up is really a fundamental piece of a breakdown of other types of get-ups, specifically of burpees. Military guys are very familiar with the idea of dropping down to the ground and getting up with weapons. So push-ups aren't exactly what we need to do, but they are a base level of preparation that anybody can do absolutely anywhere, and everybody has time to do this type of program. The way that we would start this is we would test our max push-ups. I'm talking about max good push-ups, clean lines, core engaged the whole time, no back sway. If the back sway comes in, you're done. That's it. You've lost it. You've lost the core contraction component of the push-up. That's your max number. Drop one off of that and call that your max number. So we do our test to establish our baseline, and then we do something that I don't know why other people don't do. We cut that number to 40%. If you did 10 super beautiful max push-up, chest touching the ground, then we would do sets of 4 to start. If you're crazy and you want to get into it a little bit harder, maybe sets of 5, but that starts to get dicey. What we would do is we would start a volume cycle. We would keep the intensity the same, and we would add volume or sets over time. So think about doing this as an EMOM, every minute on the minute. You would start with, say, 10 minutes, and you would do 10 sets of 4. You would set a clock, and it would be a repeating timer for 1 minute. And when the bell rings, you do 4 push-ups, and then you hang out for the rest of the time. And then the next time you come back to do another workout, then you would add a set or 2. Oftentimes, if you are starting from a deconditioned position, you would add 1. If you're already somebody who's done a lot of push-ups in the past, then you would add 2 sets. And you would start walking this up towards like an hour. Most people don't have that much time, so a lot of people will move it up towards 30 minutes. When you build up towards 30 minutes, then you would start over, you would retest your max, and you would go back and do another 40 to 50% number, and then you would start over at 10 minutes. It is a rolling wave. You build up your volume at one intensity, the volume drops off, which is your built-in rest phase, but you're not stopping training, and then you would start over with a new number, 5, 6, whatever, and build up from there again. So let's conceptualize this on a graph because, nerds, we have our X and our Y axis. We're gonna call this our volume, and we're gonna call this time, or number of workouts perhaps. And you would start with a specific volume. Say, if you did 4 sets of 10, then there would be 40 down here, and that would be the number. As you progressed over time, the volume would go up. When you hit something like 30 total sets, then this number would drop off, and you would start over with your retest and build back up. And this wave is gonna go up in an increasing wave form shape. There's a better math term for that. I don't remember what it is. But the idea is that this volume is lower than this volume is lower than this volume. So you're constantly getting better over and over and over again, and your numbers go up over time. But the point of readiness is that you are not doing max training because you don't know what else you'd have to do in that day. The idea of readiness, as I think of it, as many other trainers think of it, is that we don't want to be doing max sets. We're not doing this just to try to get pretty. We're doing this for a functional reason. The reason we are not doing a max set of push-ups every time is because you will frag out. you will get tired and you won't be able to do other tasks throughout the rest of the day. For most people, high-level athletes will be able to max out and recover very quickly, but normal people don't max out and recover very quickly. A method like this is meant to be done 5 or 6 days a week so that we can get to a high volume very quickly. And then this part of the graph right here is the rest phase. So when we retest and we drop back down, we're still doing work. We bumped up the number of reps per set by retesting our max, and then we build up again and again and again. This method works very well as an introductory method to push-ups. For people who haven't done a ton of push-ups in their life, this is probably the most solid plan that we have. The goal is to not train so hard that you don't want to train anymore, because that's what happens when you take people and you ask them to do max push-ups all the time. They fail, they don't think they're good at it, and they quit. The goal is to not quit. The goal is to have improved athletic development for a long period of time, so that we can then apply these athletic skills to other things. If you are just doing push-ups, you are not doing an athletic program. There's no agility in there. You're not picking up anything heavy. Your back's probably not going to feel great if you just do push-ups on its own. So think of this as part of a larger program that you would do before other things. If you were doing a push-up progression like this, you would do this before kettlebells. You would do this before clubs. And you would stack these programs on top of each other. This is all part of the larger idea of the Tetris of training. You can run a bunch of separate programs which each focus on different athletic attributes all at the same time, and you will end up doing something like muscle confusion on accident. Because the volume goes up every day and this wave continues to happen, and then whatever you do after this, whether it be single arm club program, two hand club program, basic kettlebell programs, simple and sinister, you can stack these things up on top of each other repeatedly forever. But because the push-ups are at a different volume every day and the program you do after it every day changes, you are essentially doing scientific, improved nerd math muscle confusion. Yeah, I think that's how you would say it. People who are more athletic already or who have been better at push-ups in the past could pick a different number than 40%. 40% I'm picking for people who are very new to push-ups and they need to have more gas in the tank to make sure that they can hold their technique properly. If you have done a lot of push-ups in the past, then this number could be 50% or 60%. But I like to keep it at 50% because adding volume is where the secret of this is. The last sets you do, the new sets, if you go from 10 sets to 12 sets, sets 11 and 12 are where you get your athletic development. Everything up to that is really just the warm-up. So think about this idea, volume cycles for push-ups. Test your max, pick a number, 40, 50, or 60%. Don't lie to yourself, probably pick 40 or 50%, and then start adding volume over time. Today we are going to talk about our second method of push-up progression. This method comes from us from JP over at Ganbatte Fitness. JP is a world-class triathlete. I think he was top 10 back when there were still triathletes happening around the world. And Ironman triathlete, not the short ones, the long ones, the 26-mile run, the 112-mile bike, and the 2-mile swim. That guy. So I stole this method from him, 100% from him. Go hang out at Ganbatte Fitness. These guys are crazy endurance athletes. This was a method that I stole from him, 2 or 3 years ago, when he was using this method to do 900 push-ups a day in 30 minutes. You do not start there. That is not where you start. You start at the bottom. This method uses 3 sets of push-ups throughout the day, every day, because crazy endurance athletes. Each set is 10 minutes long. It is an EMOM, every minute on the minute. And you would start with a low number. You would test your max and you would do, once again, probably 40 or 50% of that max, depending on who you are. You could do 60%, but it starts to fall apart and get real hard down here somewhere. The point of this method is that there are big breaks between the sets. So you wake up in the morning, you do a 10-minute EMOM. At noon, you do another 10-minute EMOM. And at night, sometime before you go to bed, doesn't matter, you do another 10-minute EMOM. You would take your number, probably say 40 or 50%. If you've run method 1, then you would already have fairly decent numbers. So the point of doing it with morning, noon, and night is that there is recovery in between the sets so that you can push a little bit harder and your numbers can be even bigger. It also just breaks it up throughout the day so you don't have to do 30 minutes of push-ups in the morning or directly before your other workout. This allows you to Tetris these sets around your other workouts. And JP over at Ganbatte Fitness is, running and cycling and doing all kinds of other crazy stuff all day, every day. So this method works really well for him. Pick your number and you do the same number for the whole week. So let's say you were doing 5 push-ups. You would do 10 sets of 5 in the morning in 10 minutes, 10 sets of 5 at noon in 10 minutes, 10 sets of 5 in the evening in 10 minutes. And you would do it 5-6 days a week. And then next week you would add a rep. You would go up to 10 sets of 6, 3 times a day. JP ran this up above sets of 30. So, but think about that. He started somewhere at a low number and you add 1 rep a week. You can predict when you're going to get to your specific volume. It gets pretty dicey when you get above 20 reps, or it does for me anyway. So if you wanted to get to 30 total sets of 30 and you started at 5 reps, you would need 25 weeks. So you can plan where you want to be when you want to be there very precisely. This does require you to already be fairly good at push-ups, or your numbers could start all the way down at 10 sets of 1. But push-ups are very much related to core strength and your ability to hold that position for a long period of time. Doing 10 sets of 30 really reduces your break over time, right? 5 push-ups doesn't take that much time, so you have a lot of break. Because it's an EMOM, when you go to 6, you get slightly less break, or you get slightly better at push-ups. Classic methods here, methods that I really enjoy, forcing you to either get better or have less rest. Usually, people choose to get better, they choose to get faster, they choose to get more precise technique. I would recommend you run our Method 1 in our previous push-up program video first if you are new to push-ups. If you are already an athlete who has a lot of experience with push-ups, then you can go right into Method 2. I find usually people are not being totally truthful with themselves and they are not very good at push-ups. So usually I push people into Method 1 first, because it can all happen in a controlled time period, and the longer time period will force you to make more adaptations to getting better at something. There's slightly different psychological tricks that are running with these two things, which have slightly different effects on the body. Being really good at push-ups can very much depend on how strong your glutes are, because that determines how strong your lower back can be, and that determines how hard you can fire your core. Your abs should be on the entire time. When you're doing push-ups in a program like this with the specific intent to get better at push-ups themselves, then it's all based on how strong your core contraction can be. And usually this falls apart when the core falls apart. I prefer that you keep your technique. If you do set 1 and set 2 and you have perfect technique, and on set 3 you start to fall apart, don't push through. Stop. And then the next day, get a little bit further and hold for 1 more set of perfect technique until you get to your 30 total sets in the day. Anywhere you fall apart, if you're falling apart in set 1, this is not the method for you. In conclusion, be good at push-ups probably before you start this. Add 1 rep per week. Do this 5 to 6 days per week. This is a lot of training. This is meant for strength, endurance, and holding proper technique. When you fall apart, you're done. If you're falling apart in set 2 at noon, you're done. You need to find a different method, or you need to lower your numbers down lower. If you can't hold your technique in set 2, then you need to start shaving off reps off of your total until you can hold form all the way through. Of course, thank you to JP over at Ganbatte Fitness. Brilliant training. I can't take credit for this. I stole this. Today we are going to answer the question, how often should you do push-ups? We made 2 Nerd Math videos a couple of weeks back about push-ups, push-up progressions. Basically, the idea was volume cycles, add volume cycles, and do the push-ups a lot. We were basing all of that on a program from Ganbatte Fitness from JP, the head coach over there, who is a world-class triathlete, and he does push-ups every day. This year, he's doing 400 push-ups every day of the year, the entire year. So the answer is you can do push-ups a lot. It depends on several things. Is doing push-ups a requirement for your job? Military guys will have to do push-ups because it's part of their fitness test. So they do push-ups all the time. The reason we make push-up nerd math programs is that most people don't do push-ups very well because their core isn't strong enough to do push-ups well. And a lot of people lie to themselves about how good they are doing their push-ups. They should be straight arm, all the way down, straight arm. So the first question is it part of your job? If it is a part of your job, then you need to do those push-ups probably 5 to 6 days a week. If it is not part of your job, then you can probably do push-ups 2 or 3 days a week. Focus on your form and technique and some good strategy. My strategy is always volume cycles followed by density cycles, or volume cycles followed by starting over with a higher rep count volume cycle. Do you need to do push-ups if you have other gear? Probably not. I do a lot of kettlebells, so I do the majority of my pressing movements with kettlebells. But I am a farm boy deep down in my soul, and I've spent a lot of time picking up and lifting things overhead. The way you get good at picking things up and lifting them overhead is to do that a lot. So I practice kettlebell presses a lot instead of push-ups. The other thing that you could definitely replace push-ups with is double kettlebell jerks. 2 kettlebells, dip down, drop underneath, lock out. It's a double hip drop movement. With kettlebells, it's different than it is with barbells, because with kettlebells, your arms have to end up perfectly straight overhead, unlike with barbells where your hands might be wide, and they end up in a perfectly straight line and they move independently. Double kettlebell jerk is an extraordinarily good replacement for push-ups if you have the equipment to do it. It's using legs, it's using abs, and you can set up and do it for time. The thing that you can do with kettlebells that you can't do with push-ups is you can make the kettlebells lighter so that you can go faster and you can build up in a whole different mathematical way. With push-ups, you weigh the same, you do push-ups. You can add weight, but it's kind of hard to effectively take weight away in predictable ways. Kettlebells solve that problem. You can do 2 12s, 2 14s, 2 16s, build up to 2 32s. Watch the competition kettlebell guys do double 32K jerk for 10 minutes. It's a thing of beauty. I guarantee you those guys are good at push-ups because it's very similar in the way that it is loaded. Core has to be on. If you do it with kettlebells, there's no way to not have your core on or you'll rip your spine in half. So you can kind of solve a lot of problems very quickly. The last question you should ask is, are you preparing for something specific? My buddy JP, world-class triathlete, does push-ups because he's improving his upper body performance so that he swims better. So he's been running an experiment for a while now to see if doing push-ups makes him swim better, if he builds up more upper body endurance so that he can both push and pull himself through the water more effectively in a very simple and easy way that's wrapped around all of his other training, which is barbells, which is lots of sled pulling, which is all types of other things. There are some sports that you can benefit very greatly from just doing lots of push-ups. All endurance activities can be benefited from doing any type of endurance activity. Push-ups are just a really good, easy one to do. Push-ups are a fundamental part of chest towards the ground get-ups. When you think about get-ups, think chest down, think body on your side, left and right both, and think lying on your back. Think we have Turkish get-ups for lying on our back. You have side get-ups, and then there are the burpee family of get-ups. Burpees, chest down, the first part of that is a push-up or a cobra push-up to a snap forward. It could be symmetrical snap forward, it could be a side snap forward like surfers do, but push-ups can help you prep for a lot of that stuff. If you are not good at doing push-ups, then you're probably not going to be great at doing burpees. And then you have to ask yourself, do you have a purpose or a need to do burpees? Everybody should do burpees at some point in their training so that they get neurologically good at them, because you should be good at getting up from the ground from all the positions you might end up on the ground in. If you've ever fallen off of horses or off dirt bikes, or you're in martial arts class, you realize you hit the ground in a lot of weird ways, and it's usually pretty important to get up from those positions quickly if you can. In the case of horses, you don't want to end up underneath a horse, or there could be other horses behind you. In the case of dirt bikes, generally the same thing. You don't want to lose it, come off the bike and get run over by somebody else. You want to get up and get out of the way. And in martial arts, you want to get up and turn around and figure out where the attacker is. Doing push-ups could be a fundamental part of that training. If you're training for another sport and it's not part of your job, then I would also recommend you put push-ups at a 2 to 3 times a week program so that you can spend all that other time doing other types of training. You could do push-ups 2 days a week. You could do a break fall series for 30 minutes, 2 days a week. And that would probably be a better overall effect than just doing push-ups 4 days a week. So wrapping this all up, always think about the questions. Ask yourself why you're doing what you're doing. Is there a purpose behind it, or is it just for fun? All these are the questions you have to ask. If you're preparing for a sport, can you spend that time more effectively preparing for something else? If you are doing push-ups only 2 or 3 days a week, then you would probably alter the math from what we had published before. And you would probably add 1 or 2 more sets of volume each time you do it, because you have so much more break in between. If you're training 5 to 6 days a week, you go up probably only 1 set of volume at a time, because the goal is to live through it, and you're not trying to kill yourself because you have to do it again tomorrow. So you're trying to build the neurological skill of getting good at push-ups. If you're only doing them 2 to 3 days a week, you can push it a little bit harder, because it doesn't matter so much if those muscles aren't as effective the next day because they are tired and recovering. I hope we've now answered the question, how often should you do push-ups? The answer is 5 to 6 days a week if it's your job, 2 to 3 days a week if it's not your job and you're integrating it into some other type of sports preparedness.